What I'm going to cover first is the barn. The barn is located in North Brazos County. If you know where Old Bundick Road is, which is off Macy, does that help? Which is north of Curtin. It's out that way, south of OSR. It's an Amish barn, and it all started with a good friend of mine. His name is Bill McLean. He's from South Carolina, Rock Hill, South Carolina, and he was on working on a master's degree at A&M, and I ran across him, and we spent some time together and became friends. And he invited Paul and I. Paul is here somewhere with my wife. She's my first wife. We were invited to go with he and his friend up to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, to look at the Amish country, and we did. And on that trip, we were looking at the countryside, and we came across a family that let us look at their barn. And we went into the barn, and it was clearly an Amish barn that was used for drying tobacco. And we got to look at the barn, and both Bill and I are interested in woodworking, and what caught our attention was the joinery in the Amish barn. It's old, probably dates back at least 150 years, maybe more than that. And it's mortise and tenon with wooden pegs. You've seen that before, I'm sure. And that's how the barn is constructed, and it had been around for a good while. So we left and went back to our home places. And then Bill wanted to own a barn like that, so he went back, and this was in Intercourse, Pennsylvania, which was east of Lancaster. And he started asking around if there's an old barn that he could buy and disassemble, relocate to his farm in Rock Hill, South Carolina. And he was getting nowhere, but he was persistent. And he went back 3 times, all to the harness shop in Intercourse, trying to find someone that knew where an old barn was that he could buy, disassemble, and take back. And they were getting tired of him, so they said, why don't you just go and have one built? And you need to talk to Ephraim Reel. And he gave him the address. So he went to Ephraim Reel and his construction company and talked to them about them coming to North Carolina or South Carolina and building an Amish barn for him. They had that chat, and he had to go back several times until finally Ephraim and his workers agreed to go to Rock Hill and build him a barn. Well, he was just fascinated with it and kept telling me that I need to go meet Ephraim. So I did. I was on a trip to York, Pennsylvania, doing some work up there, and Intercourse was only 50 miles east of that. So I decided, okay, I have a phone number for Ephraim. I'll stay in a motel, stay overnight, and go visit with Ephraim. So I drove there, and I met Ephraim, and we sat down, and he knew Bill McLean, and he knew why I was there. He was very friendly. We talked, he chatted, and he said, nice to meet you. And then I went home. So I thought that did not go real well, but he's an interesting guy, and I'm glad I got to meet him. Well, I had another trip to York, and I decided, okay, I'm going to go talk to Ephraim again. And I met him. He says, I know why you're here. And I said, well, yes, I'd like you to build me a barn. He said, where do you live? I said, I'm in Texas. He said, well, that's nice. That's a nice place to live. And we chatted a little bit, and that was it. Well, good day. So I left. And then I had another trip to York, and I went by, and I visited with Ephraim again. And this time, he had some friends with him. And I visited with him. I said, I sure would like you to build a barn for me. And he said, I tell you what, we'll take a vote. And if our people want to go to Texas and build you a barn, we'll come. And but we'll schedule a vote, and we will do so. So he said, now call me. And he does have a phone, but the phone they have is outside his building. So when you call him, it rings a long time before someone answers. But he said, call me. I said, when do you want me to call? He said, oh, in about a week. Why don't you call me in a week? Maybe we will have had the vote there. So I called him, and sure enough, they had not had the vote. So I called him again, and they had not had the vote. And then I called him the third time, and he said, we voted. I said, how did it come out? He said, we will come. Here I have a crew that is going to build me a barn. But that was just the beginning. The meeting obviously went quite well, and I was very pleased to do it, but Ephraim wanted to know, what kind of barn do I want? And I said, I have no idea. Why don't you build me the same barn that you built Bill McLean? And he said, okay, I've got those blueprints. And I said, I may change up the location of a couple of doors, but why don't you just duplicate that? He said, that's fine. Okay, how do we do this? And he said, well, you've ordered a barn, and I'm going to come and build it. And I said, okay, what am I to do? He said, well, you're to give me some money. And I said, well, I can do that. He said, I want a down payment. And he said, I will write you out a receipt. And as it turned out, that was it. There's one piece of paper that said Amish barn and had the dimensions and a price. And I had to give a down payment, and that was it. There is no contract. And the reason for me coming up there 3 times is he wanted to know if I would do it. And he wanted to know if he could trust me. And after that, that's it. They build a trust with you, and it is lifelong. So that's what I needed to do. I did not know that at the time, but that was it. But I had, in the people, these are some of the people that I met with that day. Ephraim, Elmer, Aaron, Amos, Elon, Rebecca, Samuel, Moses, and Andrew. Rebecca is Ephraim's wife. That was the crew that I had met with. What I had to do was prepare before they came. And I had the dimensions. I didn't have a blueprint, but I had the dimensions. And I was to supply the slab. I was to supply the anchor bolts, the plate, which is the 2x8 that goes on the top of the concrete, electricity, air compressor, a material handler. I did not know what that was, but I learned. A crane and an operator. I have never done that before. Roofing materials, and we have to provide the food for them. We had to provide sleeping quarters for them, ladders, sawhorses, and a down payment. So that's what I had to do. We didn't know exactly when he would be coming, but he said, we will not come in the summer. And I said, I don't blame you. I wouldn't either. So that was it. We didn't have a date yet, and this was, my first trip up there was in 1997. But as it turned out, they were willing to come in the wintertime because it's not good weather in the wintertime up there, and they can possibly come and do work in the winter here. So they said, let's do it in February. So this would be February 1999 is when they would start. I had to design a slab. I knew the dimensions. So a friend of mine, you may know Dan McGilvray at the time, but he was the one that drew up the plans for the slab. In fact, you can see it, a little bit of it there. February 99. The question was this, and this is what killed a different project. There was a gentleman from Austin that wanted an Amish barn, and he knew that I had one made, and he wanted to meet Ephraim and all of that, get all of that done. And he was given the same deal. You go ahead and pour your slab and get everything ready, and then we'll come and build it for you. But he was concerned that if he poured a slab, would they come? So he backed out. He did not want that risk. Also, he wouldn't have a contract either. So there was one to be built outside of Austin that never got built because of that. But nevertheless, that was part of the trust. I had to trust that they would show up and they would build my barn. And I thought, well, the worst case scenario is that I would end up with a slab. And I can do something with a slab. So I didn't think my risk was all that high. But nevertheless, I was a bit anxious. I had to get the slab in, and I had not done that before. But nevertheless, we had to clear some spot for it, and that would be dozer work. So we did clear that. I decided where it should be. We ordered the roofing material on January 13th. We prepared for the pour on January 13th, and the slab was poured. The slab was an interesting deal because my son-in-law was working with Hensel Phelps, which had the concrete contract for a Minute Maid Park. So it was a huge project, of course. And I told him, I said, you know, I need a slab. A little different than the ballpark, but I need a slab. So he talked to some of his workers, and they got interested in it. And they said, we will come up and work your slab. I said, well, where do I order steel? And he said, we buy so much steel you wouldn't believe it. And we have so much extra steel, I bet you I can supply your steel for you. All you have to do is come down in a lowboy and we'll load you up. Well, it took 3 trips to get all the steel that we needed. So we got all the steel free. And then they came up on a Saturday with the pour and finished out the slab. It probably has more steel per square inch than anything in this county because the steel was free, so we used a lot of it. We got the slab poured, and I ordered a material handler from Austin, and they delivered that, learning what that was. And about the crane and the operator, I worked construction when I was in high school. And I remember working on projects where there was a crane and an operator, and you need a good one. And I didn't know anything about it. And I told Ephraim, I said, I'm having trouble with that. I don't know exactly how to get a crane and an operator that's skilled enough for you. And he said, don't worry, I'll take care of that. I said, well, all right. I thought, well, he'll call someone in Brazos County and get that arranged. No, they brought a crane from Pennsylvania, driven by an Amish and his son. So they had the crane on, it's mounted on a vehicle, so they drove it all the way from Pennsylvania. It was, he and his son drove down, so that took care of that. So I was pleased with that. Here's the drawing for the slab. This is Dan's drawing, so it was not blueprint quality, but nevertheless, it worked fine. We wanted a bathroom in it, and we didn't know where, so we just kind of picked a corner. And as the clock was ticking, we had to get that plumbing in. And I got my son, I said, you know, we got to get this stuff in. Well, how do you do it? Well, I hadn't done that before, so I went to, and I'm not going to tell you who it was, that I went to a local plumbing supply and asked them, how do you put the plumbing in the slab for a bathroom? And can you tell me the dimensions and all of that? And I was going to buy the parts there, but he said, go to the library and look it up. So that was how helpful that one was. That plumbing supply is out of business now. But nevertheless, we got that, and it was time to put it in because the pour was coming the next day, and my son was going to do it and help me, and he got the flu. So he did it with the flu. So he put in a lot of tough hours. But nevertheless, we got it all in. The pour went great. And these are the plans, and this is really the basics of it. It is 48 feet by 80 feet. It has 16 by 16 bays, and we'll look at some of those. The verticals are hemlock. All of the lumber came from Pennsylvania. We don't have this dimension lumber in Texas. The hemlock, the verticals, the maximum is 24 feet long, 10 by 10s. All the horizontals are oak, and those are usually 8 inches by 10 inches oak. The outside walls are 13 feet tall. The peak is 31 feet. It has stairs in it. It has 2 large doors, a small door, 2 sliding doors for the second floor. You've seen in movies where they're loading hay upstairs? Well, we put that in. We haven't loaded hay, but we did it anyhow. We have 1/3 of the second floor that is decked. We have 2 cupolas. You can see in the frame, those up there. We have a beam for a pulley to haul stuff up to the second floor. So the beam is there, and it's a 3 by 2 slope roof. It's big. It's big. But this is essentially what Bill McLean had, so that's what I wanted, that's what I got. The reason why only 1/3 of the second floor is decked is that they gave me a certain amount of time, and that was it. They agreed to come after church on a Sunday, be in Texas a Sunday, and get back for church the next Sunday. And that's all they would give me. So they would build whatever I wanted for the time they had. Now, all the joinery was done in Pennsylvania. So they didn't have to cut a single joint here. So they were just assembling here. They brought the crew in, and that was it. Here is the blueprint. 2 pages, very simple. Here's a barn, here are some dimensions, and that's how you do it. There's a longer story than that, but I'll move on. The challenges that we had, of course, was we got to feed these people, and we got to house them. Well, there's a house out there, and my son and daughter-in-law and grandchildren were living in that house. Well, that was fairly inconvenient, so I moved them out. And I don't remember where they lived, but it doesn't matter. They had to find a place. So they all moved out, and we put all the Amish in the house there, and we had to feed them. And we have a blacksmith shop. I'm hoping I can get to the blacksmith shop. We had the blacksmith shop, and we have a bay in the blacksmith shop that was empty. And we got some sawhorses and plywood and made a table and made it and chairs around and fed them family style. So our task was to feed them lunch and supper. We would give them breakfast materials in the house and then bed them all in the house. So that was part of what we did, and I thought, well, that's going to be easy, but I had forgotten we have to cook. So Paula took that over with my mother and anyone else willing to do a casserole or anything like that. And I asked them, okay, what do you want to eat? And they said, we will eat whatever you eat. We have no restrictions whatsoever. So we just cooked all kinds of stuff. Paula said it just about killed her. But those were some of the challenges that we had. And I had not been around the Amish. I mean, I had seen them from afar, but I had never really known them well. So I was a little anxious about that. But those are some of the final preparations that we did to get ready, is putting the anchor bolts in and getting the plates down and getting my family out of the house and making sure that we had everything in order. Then there's the slab. I thought it looked awfully nice. We cleared out a lot and burned some brush and stuff to get it ready. And you can see the anchor bolts and you can see the plumbing in there as well. But that's basically what it was before they came. And then here they came. Arrival was February 22nd, 1999 on a Tuesday. And they arrived right at 4 o'clock. 3 18-wheelers. That's one of them. There is one of them. The material handler, that's the material handler to unload this stuff. All the joinery was done. So they were unloading it as soon as they arrived, and I checked it. They arrived in 2 black 12-passenger vans. Now the Amish don't drive, but the Mennonites do. And they have Mennonites on their crew. So they rode all the way from Ennicorse, Pennsylvania, all the way to North Brazos County in those 2 vans to meet the big trucks and the guy driving the crane with his son. So they all arrived at about the same time. My entrance to the farm was not sufficient, so they used the material handler to pick up my gate and move it out of the way so they could get those trucks in and unload the trucks. They arrived at 4 o'clock, and I timed it. 7 minutes after 4, they were working. And I'll show you there's the crane. You can see it's mounted on the back of the truck, and it can haul stuff, pick up stuff very, very high. There's part of the crew. I'm there. I was younger then, but that is part of the crew. There were 11 workers that came. In addition to the workers, we had some families that came. They, when I was meeting with them and telling them I'm in Texas, one of the questions was, where is Texas? And I said, well, they kind of knew, but they didn't know the states around it. So I told them in all. And we had 11 workers. We had 2 wives. Rebecca came, that's Ephraim's wife, and Glenn, 1 5-month-old infant, 2 of Ephraim's son, Eli and John, and the crane operator brought his son. So we had 2 wives, a bunch of children, and 11 workers. All in one house. And they ate a lot. So they came out and they started working, unloading things. And this right here is called a bent. This is part of the construction of the barn, and this is the back wall that they're putting on. I want you to look at the kind of the day. You know, the days are short in February. So they arrived at 4 o'clock, and before they finished work on that first day, 2 bents were up. That's how fast they work. I was amazed how it went. The first bent is already up. If they had not used the crane, they would have needed 30 workers to be able to do it with the ropes and the pulleys and all of that. And the 30 people weren't willing to come to Texas. So the crane was their substitute, but you can see some of the material around and some of them working on putting the bents. They put the bents together with the wooden pegs on the ground, and then they use the crane to lift them up, and they sit in mortises that are already there. And that's how it's done. We ask them about pictures, and we ask them about publicity. And they said, we don't mind pictures. There are some Amish that do. But we don't mind you taking pictures, but we do not want to talk to you while we're working. We don't want to visit with you. We'll visit with you after we eat and after we work, but please don't come and visit with us while we're working. Also about publicity, we would rather you not tell anyone that we're here until after we're gone. So we had some friends, clearly they knew what was going on, so there were some people that came out. But we honored their request. We didn't tell anybody in the press or anything that this was going on. And we didn't visit with them while they were working. It took me a while to get over it. I have never seen craftsmen of this caliber. Them starting work 7 minutes after they got out of the truck, it was an indication of their work ethic. They didn't speak much to each other. They knew what to do. They had done this before. And they would work quietly. They would not take a break until it was time to eat. So they would start at about 8 in the morning, and they would work until 12, and then all of a sudden they would stop. And they would come and they would have about an hour off to eat. Then they would go back to work, and they would work until about 5 without a break. And then they would have the evening off. And that's the way they would work. There was one instance where they were they were working on a bent, and one gentleman was toward the end, and he was putting in the slot in a mortise and tenon, and he needed a peg. He was out of a peg, and he took his hammer and he tapped the beam, and then he looked up, and one was in the air coming his way, and he caught it, he put it in, and went about his work. Not a word was spoken. There was another instance where, and you'll see some of these pictures where they're on top of the beam and putting some pegs in with a sledgehammer, and finished, dropped it, someone at the bottom caught it, and then went on their work. Not a word was spoken. That's how, it was almost choreographed. It was fascinating to watch. I asked if we could tape this, and my cousin is a videographer, and he said, we don't mind that at all. So she taped the whole thing. Every hour they were on tape. What was interesting is in the evenings, of course, they love to talk, and we had a great time with them in conversation. Not while they were working, but when they were on break. They had never seen themselves on TV. So we would get a copy of that day's tape and put it on TV, and they could watch themselves. And they were just fascinated to be able to watch themselves work. So that was kind of fun along the way. Let me just show you a few scenes. Here they're putting in some of the wooden pegs. This is constructing a bent. Here they are putting it up. They do have some ropes on it to hold it, and then the crane is pulling that up, and then it fits in some slots. And then they secure it with more wooden pegs. Here they are putting it in the slot where they will fasten it with the wooden pegs through those holes. Here's some more bents that are being put on, and here they are. OSHA would not be happy. You can see what they do. Now these beams are, I would guess, maybe 6 to 8 inches wide. And they're walking back and forth as if they were on a flat floor. They go up, of course, on the ladders, and then they do their work. The crane is bringing the heavy stuff in, and they fasten it, and then they go on their way. So that was really what they did in the first week. In day 2, remember day 1 is only a few hours long. In day 2, toward the end of the day 2, they were working on the roof. That's how fast this went. Here they are. This is hitting in the peg with a sledgehammer. This is a picture of some of the joinery. We didn't cut the ends of them off because we liked the looks of the pegs coming out. They did bring some extra materials in case they missed a joint and had to redo a joint. And there were hundreds of joints. And they said afterwards they missed one joint. And that was a mortise that was a little bit bigger than it needed to be, but it was up in the very top, and it didn't matter anyhow. And that was the only mistake they made in the joinery. And they did all of this in Pennsylvania, and then came back and put it together there. Here's some of the joinery as well. It's just gorgeous work, and again the craftsmanship is unprecedented. The thing that I had trouble getting over is after they did all of their work and they went home, the idea of hiring any kind of crew locally to do any work for me was disgusting. I got used to a group of workers that are highly skilled craftsmen that have a work ethic that you have never seen before, that work together so well, of many different ages. And to watch them work people would just watch them. It was worth just watching them work. And then you think about getting a crew out there to do something. And one, are they going to show up on time? And two, are they going to have the equipment? Are they going to do it right? And how many breaks are they going to make? And they're going to talk half the time. You don't have any of that. And it's an amazing difference. Here are just some shots along the way of them working. That's Ephraim there. And that's his son. There was one urgent point was we had the material handler and everything, and there was a key to it to get it started. And someone needed to get the material handler to move some stuff, and the key was missing. And I thought, well, we rented this from Austin, and they're only here for a short time. we're going to be toast here. And he went to his son and he said, you were sitting in that seat, weren't you, of the loader? He said, yes, sir. He said, the key's not in it. Yes, sir. Do you know where it is? Yes, sir. Would you get it? Yes, sir. So he got it and gave it to him. That was it. That was it. But here he is. We brought a trampoline out there so they could play on it, and what they did on Sunday afternoon largely was sleep on it. They took naps. They would not work on Sunday. I did take them around. I didn't know the Amish well. And I thought, wow, these are people from a different planet. And what I think I will do is I'll drive them around. So I got them in my, this was after the first week. The first week there were 11 of them. And in the second week, and my notes are may be incorrect. I have one set of notes that said there were 6 that remained to finish the barn. The first crew left on Friday. They arrived on Tuesday. They arrived on Tuesday, left on Friday. And all that was left for the second week is putting the siding on. Everything else had been done. So there were some that stayed over the weekend. And I asked if they would come to my Sunday school class and teach a Sunday school class about their religious experiences in religion and everything. And they hem-hawed around and kind of got out of that one. So I wanted to drive them around. And I put them in my Suburban, and I started driving, and I looked in the rear view mirror, and every one of them was asleep. And I thought, they aren't going to be able to see scenery. I have to stop for them to see anything. So I took them to A&M, and we walked around the stadium and everything, and they were amazed. And then I thought, well, I'm going to take them to a place where I buy tools and lumber. So I took them to Lowe's. And I got them out, and we were walking down the aisles, and one of them said, you know, this just looks like our Lowe's at home. I thought, okay. Okay. We took them to Jose's and fed them Mexican food. And we said, you need to be a little careful with jalapenos. But they seemed to enjoy that. They seemed to enjoy that. That worked out well. Here they are continuing to work on it. This is where they're beginning to work on the roof. This was day 2. This is them working on the roof in day 2. Remember, they started on Tuesday with about 2 hours of work, and they finished on Friday, and most of them went home. This is some of the joinery. This is the second floor. This is the second week where they're putting up the siding. The siding is Eastern White Pine, and they brought that as well. And it's tongue and groove, and they had to hand fit every board. That little, this is where you would load the hay into the second floor. We have 2 of those with sliding doors. This is the crew without me, which is the better picture. And this is where we would have, we can put, there's a beam up there where you can put a hoist and bring stuff up to the second floor. You can see back here the flooring. This is the back third of the barn. And the other is all open. And that turns out to be a blessing. Oh, and here's the staircase up to the second floor. In the summertime, obviously it's hot. It's a white barn, which means that it reflects a lot of heat. But when you're in a building that is open like that, all of the heat rises and the cool air settles down. And it is comfortable in the barn year-round. We can have meetings in the barn in the middle of July, and it is tolerable. It's not cold, but it's tolerable, and it's because of the tall ceiling. So it's a blessing that we did not floor all of this. One, you can see the architecture and the work craftsmanship, so I like just looking up and seeing the work. But the heat rises, goes out the cupolas. They built the cupolas as well and brought them down. But it's very, very comfortable. It would amaze you. The slab cools at night, and then it stays relatively cool because there's no hot air on the slab. The hot air goes up, and it's surprisingly comfortable year-round. Here's some others. Back in here is where we built the bathroom. They left. They didn't have time to build a bathroom. So they shipped the timbers, And my son and I and neighbor, Mike Workman, and I put all of that together and built the bathroom. And I asked him, I said, how do we build a bathroom? Where would you suggest we do it? I don't want to cut off any of these braces. And he said, well, why don't you just build a building inside the building? I thought, wow, that's smart. So we built a building inside the building. So we have another building right here that houses the bathroom. And we didn't know how to put it together, but they label everything. AA goes to AA. AB goes to AB. And we figured that out after we had to undo a bunch of it. And we put it all together, and it really was quite easy. It went together quite well. Here's the staircase that they built. And here's the barn toward the end of the day. There it is, completely finished. These are the extra timbers that they would need if they needed to redo a joint or two, and they did not need that, so we kept that. Here's one of the big doors, here's the small door, and on the inside looking toward the pond is the other big door. When you open both of those doors, regardless of the weather, there is a breeze that goes through there, and that makes it very, very, very nice. There are the two cupolas. Those were built by the Amish and then installed there. This is the roofing material I bought. They didn't bring that. So I did a little bit, and I did the slab and all. So I get some credit along the way. And there it is. We started using it. I wanted a barn because I needed a place for my wood shop. And I needed to park some stuff, and that's what it became. But then we had, from our church, some of the people had seen it built, and the college kids wanted to have a square dance out there. So I thought, okay, that means I got to pull the tractor out and all of that. So we did, and sure enough, they started having dances out there, and it worked out quite well, and other meetings and things like that. And then our pastor's daughter had been out there for a couple of dances, and then they moved away. But she wanted to get married in that barn. And I thought, oh my. Well, all we have to do is put up a big screen, and then no one will see my wood shop. And that wasn't going to work. So the pastor and I and anybody else I could recruit moved the wood shop into the garage and cleaned up everything, and then she had her wedding. She had it out in the pasture, but the reception was in the barn. And it really worked out well. And they said, well, why don't you do that for other weddings? You have quite a business here. And I thought, well, I may try that. So we've had 24 weddings out there. As part of the work in it, we needed more restroom facilities. Evidently, when you have 400 people, one bathroom won't do it. So we needed a building, and I needed more storage. We needed another building for bathrooms, a men's bathroom and a women's bathroom, and I contacted the Amish and asked them, I know you probably don't want to come back to Texas and build another building, but could you ship me the materials? Remember, I had the experience of doing the bathroom in there. So they said, yes, what do you want? And we drew it out, and they cut all the timbers and shipped it to us. And then I got the slab poured again and the plumbing in, and then they brought us all the timbers. And I got a crew, and we started building it. AA goes into AA, BB goes into BB, and we put it together. And it worked out quite well. Well, one of the guys that he's the manager, facilities manager for our church, Will McCollum, was very, very interested in this. And the next project, and we won't be able to get to it, but the next project was a bell that I bought, and I needed a bell tower. Well, he got the equipment and did the mortise and tenon and built the tower, just as the Amish would do it. So he had fun doing that. All right, I have a little bit of time. I'm going to take up more of your time because this is what I really like. I like the barn, but I really like this. This is the Blacksmith Shop. The Blacksmith Shop was found in Kyle, Texas, and it dates back to the 1860s. And I was on a trip to San Antonio, and I liked blacksmithing, and I wanted to collect some tools, and I would stop at welding shops. And it's the welding shops that used to be blacksmith shops in the rural areas. And I thought maybe they might have some equipment or some tools I might be able to buy from them. But nevertheless, they finally, we were at Ulen, and the guy said, why don't you go to Kyle and ask the county judge there to let you see his tools. He has a collection of tools. So I went there and visited with him, and he says, you don't want to see my tools, why don't you just see the blacksmith shop? And I did not know there was one there. There is. Here it is. This is the old blacksmith shop in Kyle, Texas. Third generation blacksmith, died 9 years earlier than that, Mr. Herzog, Cotton Herzog. And I met his wife, Alice Herzog, and I asked if I could buy the contents in the blacksmith shop. And she said, I've had lots of offers there. They want to take all the tools and sell them and make some money, and just not interested in that. I said, no, I don't want to do that. I want to replicate the shop and keep all the tools together. And she was interested in that. She wanted me to buy that, but I didn't want a building in Kyle. So I said, I will replicate that building on my farm and take everything out and put it back like it was. And that's what I did. So here we're constructing the exact replica of that building. And then here it is finished, as close to it as we could get. And here it is inside. Now, this is the Triphammer that was manufactured. It's a little giant, manufactured in a plant in Nebraska. We found the guy, Sid Swademeyer, bought the plant, and he's a blacksmith. And I visited with him, and they found the old records. And the Triphammer that was installed in the blacksmith shop in Kyle was installed in the month of May 1921 to Mr. Herzog. So we found, and the serial number was there, it's 2949. And we checked it, sure enough, that was it. So we got to trace that, but this is pretty much the way it was. I had to rebuild the forge. The forge was built out of wood, and I added that. They did not have a hood, and I wanted to live a little longer than Cotton Herzog had lived, so I put a hood on it to get rid of the fumes. But we replaced all the furniture and did everything exactly as it was. The windows are exactly the same. The construction is exactly the same. So it really was to replace exactly what was there. And some of the furniture is original as well. This is the belt that drives the Triphammer, and we replaced that. It took us, I think, 12 trips to Kyle to get all of the stuff and put it in storage, wait for the building to be built. And then it was. Now here is, you can see this part. I'll have another picture of it. This is a hit and miss engine. And there's a concrete slab here, or a pedestal, that this sits on, and there would have been a belt that goes up to drive this shaft. But Kyle got electricity, and they converted that to an electric motor. This electric motor has a patent on it of 1917. It's a 3-horse motor and probably weighs as much as a car engine. But that's the motor. It works, and that's what drives it. It has two motors in it. It has one motor that starts it, and then when the RPM gets enough, the brushes come off that plate, and then the other motor takes over. So you have one to get it started and the other one to take over. And then when you hear it stop, you can hear the RPM going down, and then those brushes come and get on that new plate for the next start. But it's an old technology, but it works fine. I got a grist mill, and we can grind corn. I found that in the Thrifty Nickel in Rockdale. And there was a grist mill for sale. I'd never seen it. Paula was so excited to go to Rockdale and pick up a grist mill. But we got that, and that works fine too. This is some of the pulleys, and Bill McLean in North Carolina pulled this out of a warehouse somewhere and got it to me so I could drive the grist mill. Here's the engine. Here's the hit and miss engine. I've run it once. We found that out in the woods on our farm. And this was the old technology. I'm watching my time. This is the old technology that was used on farms. It's called a one-lunger, and it's of the type that when it will hit whenever it needs to. So it keeps the RPM going about the same time, and when it slows down, you'll hear it fire. and it will start again. But when it's on a load, it will fire every revolution. But it puts out a lot of dust and a lot of smoke. And I've run it one time, and then I thought.
What do you use it for?
Looks. It doesn't do squat.
What is it meant to be used for?
Oh gosh, it can run sawmills, it can run water pumps, it can run tractors, used to be driven by this. At the farm, just almost anything you can imagine would be used on the farm for that. Here's some of the tools that came out of the shop. This is a new anvil. The old anvil needs repair. When you use an anvil for a very long time, you get a sway in it, and you need to have that repaired. But I still have the old anvils, and it was an anvil that came out of London, an English anvil of high quality. So I was able to look at the number and do the research on it to find out that it was indeed an English anvil. Here the blower and all, and here's the drill press. Oh, and what was nice was Alice Herzog, of course, was married to Cotton Herzog, and Cotton Herzog had died 9 years earlier. But RB, this is RB, that was Cotton's son that used to work in the shop. So I told him about it, that we were having a country fair and everything, and invited them come. I'm sorry about the sweat, but he came. He and Alice came, and they toured the shop. And as he walked in, he would start telling stories because we had built it right back like it was. And I wished I had recorded it, because he would walk around for about 30 minutes and tell stories about this and this and this and this and this. And it was just an oral history that I missed. But LBJ used to go to that shop. When he was running for the legislature, he would come to the shop because that's where a lot of people would gather in town. It was kind of like the drugstore, but the men would come and go to the blacksmith shop and tell stories and all. But the condition I had with Mrs. Herzog was I wanted everything in it, but I also wanted the doors. Like many blacksmith shops, they make branding irons, and they test them on the doors. So these doors have probably 100 brands on them where they were testing them, and I'm thinking that LBJ's brand is on that door. And I haven't looked very carefully, but I got all the doors and I put them in storage, and I will look for that in time. But having him there and telling the stories was worth everything. All right, let me do this right quick. A bell. I got a bell out of a church in Utica, New York. This is Bill McLean again. He found it in a flea market and said, "You've got to have it." And unfortunately, I got it. But nevertheless, that's the church it came out of. And this is with them taking the bell out of the tower. That is how big it is. Here it was in the flea market, which I should not have taken the call. Here they are packing it up, and here they are on my lowboy. They shipped it to Waco, and I picked it up in Waco. Here it is in the crate. And this is Will doing the joinery. He got the stuff that can do the joinery with using the oak pegs. There he is doing it. There's my slab for it. This is the timbers that he did locally, and we're putting it up. There it is. I had to get a crane to get it all the way up. There's the bell going up. There it is being seated, and the roof's on, and there it is. The bell weighs close to a ton. So this had to be a pretty sturdy piece of construction to be able to hold the bell. But nevertheless, there it is, all in it. And they say when you
have a wedding out there?
We haven't had a wedding yet. We're having it Saturday.
Oh, okay.
It'll be the first wedding with the bell there. We're thinking they will want to ring it. They say that if you ring it, you can hear it a mile away. Well, we went a mile away and waited for to hear it ring, and we didn't hear it. So it's shorter than a mile, but it is loud. It is very, very loud and has a nice ring to it. But we're thinking people will. What is it?
You should have gone downwind.
Well, that's probably right. Maybe one day we will, and we'll hear it. I'm sorry, I took up all your time. Are there any questions? Yes.